Well, Elon Musk is vowing to expose Twitter's history of censorship, insisting, quote, the Twitter files on free speech suppression soon to be published on Twitter itself. The public deserves to know what really happened.
I can't take no loss.
Love that meme. Today is Tuesday, November 29th, 2022. Elon Musk teases Twitter files on free speech suppression will be released. The public deserves to know as he mounts for a war with Apple. Twitter quietly drops the COVID-19 misinformation policy, and Biden's non-binary drag queen nuclear waste guru steals bag from Minneapolis airport and is now a felon. My name is Benny Johnson, and this is The Benny Show. Totally weird and incredible times that we live in now. It was actually Lenin that said that there are many decades that go by where nothing happens, and then there are days, literally, where decades happen. And it feels like we're living in those times right now. The bombshell that hit like a weaponized nuclear warhead yesterday was Elon Musk tweeting that he is going to be releasing the Twitter files on censorship, something that this show cares deeply about, not just because one of our executive producers was wrongfully banned from Twitter for 2 years for exactly zero reason. The now legendary ALX, of course, is back, and we encourage you to follow him. But more importantly, because this censorship regime at Twitter had a direct effect on the elections of the United States of America. If you do not live inside of a country with free and fair elections, you don't live inside of a free country. We have to ask ourselves, based on the news coming out of China, what is the future for America? What's the future for you and me? What is the plan at foot? What is at hand? What are we looking down the barrel of as a society? Ladies and gentlemen, China is not a country. China is simply a slave state. It is the world's largest prison. They are demonstrating that right now. In China, you have to scan QR codes to leave your home. The government can spray strange chemicals on you anytime it wants. The government can lock you down. The government can lock you in a building that's on fire, and nothing happens. There's no recourse. Of course, there are protests right now, and we're in support of those protests. Will they topple the government? We sure hope so. But our government certainly doesn't seem to be interested at all in helping. The Biden regime took days to respond, and then their response was simply, we kind of support the right to peaceful protest, I guess. Also, we're huge fans of communist China, because that's the model we want to bring here. China is a slave state. The people who live inside of it are slave laborers. They are living at the total and complete behest of the jackboot government on their necks at all times. They do not have liberty. And the regime inside of America wishes to do the same thing to you. They have the illusion of liberty at times, but that can be, of course, taken away at the whim of anyone who is in power. So is it actually liberty? If it's not real, if it can be done away with the stroke of a pen, like 2 weeks to slow the spread, everyone stop moving, everyone stop your businesses, stop your commerce, stop speaking to each other, stop gathering for Thanksgiving or Christmas, well, then it's not actually liberty, is it? We're only as strong as our weakest link. And China is the slave state that Klaus Schwab says that he wants to use as a model for the rest of the world. This is what the Great Reset is about. The Great Reset is about Chinatizing all of the world, putting us into systems where the government controls every aspect of your life, and where freedom is simply an illusion, much like private property in China. Private property doesn't really exist in China. Private property is simply an illusion that is granted to the people so that they will pay extra taxes, wait for years to get a piece of private property that, of course, they can get locked into and burned alive in. That is exactly what is happening now in China with these protests. Again, our hearts go out to them. But the question remains, what is the plan? China is the model, and the plan is to export that, much like China exports everything else we have in our country right now. Every item, everything that you use is conceivably exported by China. It's incredible to look at the children's books that I read to my kids every single night. It says made in China on their, like, Dr. Seuss books. Why? Well, because that's the model. The model is to export the slave state model so that you can keep track and control your people. Globalism began in China, as Jack Posobiec said on the show yesterday. Globalism began in China with Tiananmen Square, and that is the model now that is going to be exported around the world. And they're going to start here, and it begins with speech, because if they can get you to not say things, they can start to train your pathways in your brain to start thinking certain ways. If they can get you to not see news, and they can get you to abandon or to just simply deny truth, which was, of course, the goal of 1984. 2 plus 2 might equal 5. If they can get you to deny truth, like Hunter Biden's laptop is real, and the Biden crime family is a crime syndicate that sold out America for money around the world to the worst actors, including the communist Chinese, if they can get you to deny that that is real, or simply to not see it, well, then they can affect your behavior. And everything inside of a functional republic is behavioral affectation. How are you behaving? How will you vote? What are you seeing? What are the algorithms that lead to the way that you cast your ballot? If they can control those algorithms, then they can control the outcomes. And that is precisely what we saw in 2020. We saw, and this is according to multiple polls, that the suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop story by Twitter itself was one of the greatest acts of electoral meddling in our time. There was never any proof that Russians meddling in the 2016 election had any consequence on the results of the election. However, there is demonstrable proof that people had no idea what the Biden crime family was up to. And that now that those secrets are coming out, there is true panic inside of the Washington regime. They want to keep this story a secret. They investigated fake Russian collusion for years, spent multi-millions on doing it and billions on free news articles doing it. Of course, it was a hoax the whole time. While this is entirely real, the world is on its head, ladies and gentlemen, and that is why this show exists. Let us begin. Why are the Twitter censorship files so important? Well, because they literally had an impact on our elections, on the information that people knew. Would you have a President Trump right now were it not for the suppression of this story? We may never know. Polling indicates that you probably would not have a President Biden. But I digress. Tucker Carlson was really excited about the Twitter files being released, and he covered it on his show last night. That's what it sounded like.
There's been a lot of censorship on Twitter, and we're going to find out what it is. Quote, the Twitter files on free speech suppression soon to be published on Twitter itself. The public deserves to know what really happened. End quote. So why shouldn't we know that? Why shouldn't we know who is shutting down free speech in a country that claims to be a democracy?
Who is shutting down free speech? What is the role of our federal government? Well, when you sign in to a federal role, you swear yourself in onto a role depending on how senior you are in those positions. I've had friends who've served in senior government positions. I lived in Washington, D.C. for 15 years. The president himself swears on the Constitution and says he'll uphold it. Inside of that Constitution and those Bill of Rights is the freedom of speech, the freedom of press, the freedom of information, the freedom of movement, the freedom of knowledge. Of course, you can't have a republic without free knowledge, without the ability to know and learn about the world around you and to vote your conscience. So it is with absolute impeachable dereliction of duty that the White House yesterday openly bemoaned that free speech, the constitutional right that they're sworn to protect, is being currently implemented at Twitter. Yesterday, the White House was saying, and of course, this is the red herring, it was always the White House, it was always the Biden regime, in their following of the Chinese model. The World Economic Forum demands that the governments of the planet follow the Chinese model, and so the first thing that must go is censorship. The reason censorship was instituted in communist China was to prevent another uprising like Tiananmen Square. The Tiananmen Square uprising was created and fomented among the peoples, and the government must now spy on you in order to prevent that from ever happening again. You must not have dissent. Single party rule. That's the goal. And the Biden White House is being very clear about it. Listen to Karine Jean-Pierre yesterday.
This is a critical moment, really, in terms of ensuring that Twitter does not become a vector for misinformation. I mean, are you concerned about Elon Musk says there's more and more subscribers coming online. Are you concerned about that? And what tools do you have? Who is it at the White House that is really keeping track of this?
So look, this is something that we're certainly keeping an eye on. And we have always been very clear, and that when it comes to social media platforms, it is their responsibility to make sure that when it comes to misinformation, when it comes to the hate that we're seeing, that they take action, that they continue to take action. Again, we're all keeping a close eye on this. We're all monitoring what's currently occurring, and we see it with our own eyes of what you all are reporting, and just for ourselves, what's happening on Twitter.
Okay, so we're keeping a close eye on Twitter. Twitter being reverted back to the 2015 rules. Under the last regime at Twitter, which was run by leftists, you could essentially go right back to 2015 and say these are the new rules that Elon Musk is instituting. It's the same rules. This is how far the left has gone. This is how far off the cliff the left has gone. They're essentially calling the old regime at Twitter, which was run by Marxists, not sufficiently censorious enough to the American public. And the White House is openly saying to a Reuters reporter there, by the way, a Reuters reporter talking about misinformation. Isn't it the AP that just fired a reporter who said that Russia bombed Poland trying to start World War III? Yes, it is. Oh, but misinformation! Not an approved news source! What is the White House doing to clamp down on free speech? The fact that it is journalists, corporate journalists, who are openly calling for the censorious regime in the White House to further censor American citizens should give you enough of a shock to realize that you're already living inside of a communist Chinese model. We are steps away from the Chinese model. They've locked you in your homes. They've used the authorities to do it. They've done trial runs. They've taken away your free speech, and they've used the organs of the government to do it. We are inside of the opening stages of the adaptation of the Chinese model here in Canada. They took the truckers and they debanked them. If you protested against the government, they took your money. That's what happens in China. If you get a yellow card in China, so you scan your phone, if that pops up yellow, which means you've either violated a tenet that the government wishes for you to uphold, that you haven't checked in and gotten your COVID swab, whatever that means, or just a bureaucrat doesn't like you, if that pops up yellow, if your screen pops up yellow when you scan your Weibo pay system that they have there in China, that means that you are not allowed in your apartment building. Do you know this? You're not allowed in your apartment. You're not allowed to buy groceries. You must live on the streets. They will effectively make you homeless. They will deperson you. This is what the Biden regime is tempting right now. We're going to keep an eye on Twitter, Karine Jean-Pierre says. Meanwhile, of course, the regime itself is openly colluding with Twitter in order to censor Americans. We learned this in Dr. Fauci's deposition. We've also learned this, of course, with the Hunter Biden story, where Mark Zuckerberg, along with those at Twitter, who we have learned in recent filings and reports, one out of The Intercept, were working hand in glove with government entities like the FBI in order to stop the release of information to the American people. This is what Elon Musk says when he says this on Twitter. The Twitter files on free speech suppression, soon to be published on Twitter itself, the public deserves to know what really happens. What does that mean? That means that we are about to see the actual communications with government officials between the FBI on the Hunter Biden laptop story, which we now are fully aware is completely, we knew it was true 2.5 years ago, And now even the corporate media have come around. We've played you the Washington Post, the New York Times, CNN, and CBS News, all with their own analysts saying this is real. Of course, we didn't need that. If you were following this show, you were ahead of the curve. And of course, you heard the great Miranda Devine last week talking about being right. You're going to see, and you need to prepare yourself, you're going to see agents of the government who are currently working, by the way, for Donald Trump, because Donald Trump was the president at the time that this was happening. So these people were working at the pleasure of the executive inside of the FBI and the DOJ. And you're going to see the actual bloody emails between them and Twitter banning a true story from coming out because it may have affected their preferred candidate. You're going to realize that you live inside of a sham. You live inside of a fraudulent system where your government and its law enforcement agencies are acting against you. You are the enemy. Much like in communist China, we are just steps away. Ladies and gentlemen, the producer of this show, ALX, tweeted last week that Elon Musk needs to release these Hunter Biden files. Raise your hand if you want Elon Musk to pull all internal discussions about the decision to censor the New York Post. And Elon Musk says this is necessary to restore public trust. The tech giant permanently banned Donald Trump from the platform in 2021. It blocked the New York Post story in 2020 on Hunter Biden's notorious laptop. It locked the conservative satire site, the Babylon Bee, away from its own accounts. Last week, Musk responded to the tweet from Alex LaRusso, executive producer of this show, and he said that this must happen. We must find out what happened. In order to get back to free speech in this country, we must find out who the actual criminals are. Who is the enemy? And too many people need to be awake. They need to be shook. And they need to recognize that the government is not their friend. They need to recognize that the government wants the China model for you. The NBA hasn't said a thing about the crackdowns in China, putting people in concentration camps, slaughtering them in their own homes. The NBA gets billions from China. These people are frauds. Eric Swalwell has said nothing about China. Eric Swalwell sleeps with Chinese spies. The Democrat Party has said nothing about China. The reason why is they want China here. The goal is total control over you, zero dissent, ever. And they can only get it through censorship. And this is why one of the largest modern plantation owners in America, which is the company Apple. Now, I use Apple products. I'm sure you do too. I may have to change that, unfortunately. We'll see what happens. But I promise you, if Apple deplatforms Elon Musk, which is what they are threatening to do, deplatform Twitter, then I will burn my Apple products. You cannot live inside of a world with too many contradictions. I already drink Starbucks. I can't have more contradictions. I won't wear Nikes. You've got to start canceling back. I've got to take into consideration this. The fact that Apple exists because of slave labor in China. Apple makes deals with the Chinese government to continue to extort their slave labor. And I'm not talking the Uyghurs, I'm talking Chinese citizens. China is the world's largest slave labor camp, the country of China. Not just the concentration camps, those are particularly bad. The country of China is a slave labor camp. And that slave labor is used as the manufacturing base for the entire rest of the modern world. That was the deal that was struck after Tiananmen Square. It was struck by Mr. George H.W. Bush. Just in case you're wondering why we're regularly and consistently turning on the Bush family here, as a longtime Bush family supporter, got to tell you, the revelations and the legacy of this family is a bloody and horrific one, and one that we should be ashamed, hang our heads in shame for as true conservatives. But that's a monologue for a different time. China can't exist without Western companies coming through and lining its pockets for slave labor. The slave labor comes from companies like Apple. Apple needs China in order to produce all of its products and then to sell them here in America for a profit. That's how the profit margins work. Use slave labor, get more money. This is the China model. This is the globalist model. And this is the model that Apple relies on. And so Apple is now, having seen what Elon Musk is doing on Twitter and how Elon Musk is hurting the Communist Party on Twitter, how Elon Musk is going to be releasing the files that will damage their preferred candidate for president in 2024. China's preferred candidate for president in 2024, because Joe Biden is bought and sold. Joe Biden is himself in debt to China and their slave labor markets. The vast majority of Hunter's portfolio comes from China. Apple must now shut down Elon Musk. It is in their interests. It all goes back to China, ladies and gentlemen. It all connects back. And so Apple is now threatening to kick Elon Musk out of the Apple Store. The news about this should come, of course, as no shock to you once you understand who is pulling the strings. Tucker had this to say about it last night.
Everybody in power is panicked over this. Apple is threatening to remove Twitter from its App Store. So if Twitter no longer can get its app on the App Store, there's no more Twitter because you access Twitter through the app. So they're essentially threatening to shut down Twitter. Meanwhile, the White House and the media are trying to convince you that the problem is not China throwing people in concentration camps, suppressing free speech. The problem is Elon Musk, who is trying to restore free speech. He's the evil one.
Yes. Do you see the world that you live in and how upside down it is? How fraudulent it is? We do indeed live inside of a clown world. It's not real. And until you have restorative leaders who will give you hard lines and will prove to you that you do indeed have free speech and that they are indeed there to protect that which they swore to uphold, we will live and continue to live inside of a fraudulent system that spirals ever more towards the China model. Jonathan Turley, our favorite lawyer and legal professional, someone who's, I don't think, a conservative at all. I doubt he voted for Donald Trump, but he is a deeply viable source, saying that what Apple is doing is tantamount to utilizing monopolistic force that we haven't seen in 100 years in order to kill a rival. Because what Elon Musk is threatening here is that he should perhaps make his own phone. Now, what you may not know is that Apple is only 1.8 billion mobile devices, right? But that may seem like a lot, but that's actually a teeny percentage of the actual cellular market. So Apple relies, of course, on iPhones in order to get the vast majority of their revenue. If Elon Musk even takes a portion of that through the creation of his own device, well, then Apple will be sitting there dead in the water. Apple will have a very, very tough time. You can see their business model. The vast majority of Apple's wealth comes from the creation of the iPhone, not from their computers or their PCs. Ladies and gentlemen, what you have here is a real existential threat, of course, to Apple's business, which is why they're freaking out. Rightfully so. Jonathan Turley saying this on the Apple threats to Elon Musk.
And this really shows the danger of the times we're living in. I mean, you don't need a state media if the media willingly takes the position of the state. And that includes Apple, which is outrageous that they are considering removing Twitter from their store. I mean, Twitter has just put up a record number of new sign-ons. The public didn't want to buy what Twitter was offering before. They've never signed on to this censorship policy, and they have flocked back to Twitter. But that's one of the reasons you're seeing this move, because they can't rely on the public. They didn't convince the public. The media, these companies that are boycotting, they're all an effort to try to coerce Musk into restoring censorship. But the actual public, the customers, are actually buying what he's selling. They want more free speech, not less. So how do you handle that? You try to stop them from even being able to get the app.
What Elon Musk has done is he has actually turned Twitter into more of a democratic republic than our country, actually. Transparent polls, people voting, seeing the results. Twitter has actually become a place where the people rule, unlike this nation, which is, again, spiraling towards corporate oligarchy. Elon Musk tweeted yesterday, Apple has mostly stopped advertising on Twitter. Do they hate free speech in America? Elon Musk opening up the floodgates of war with Apple. We encourage it. Apple, of course, is an evil company. Apple has also threatened to withhold Twitter from the App Store, but they won't tell us why, Elon says. The only reason to withhold Twitter from an App Store would be a violation of the terms of service. They're going to try and parlor Twitter. They're going to try and remove it online from the availability for you to upload, download, or to have it function on your phone. Because without the pushes of new product from Twitter, it won't operate correctly. They'll just kill the app. Elon Musk saying that this is a battle for the future of civilization. If free speech is lost in America, then tyranny is all that lies ahead. This is, of course, correct. Elon Musk seeing clearly what this shows. As you see the lockdowns in China and you see the horrors happening there, you must take into account that that is the plan for here. We have this very dim-witted view of things in the West, as though the horrors of the rest of the world cannot happen here, when in fact, not only are they happening here, they're being piloted here. The current lockdowns in China, Dr. Fauci, according to recent under oath testimony, he sent his top aide to China to see the lockdowns, and then that aide came back, told him about the lockdowns, said, we've got to do it here. That's the model. And the reason for locking us down is to control us. Dr. Fauci saying it was to get us all vaccinated. It was to push control mechanisms on a population, willing or unwilling. It's happening here. It's happening right now. Twitter's owner Elon Musk said that Apple has threatened to suspend the platform from its App Store. He's going to war with the company. Musk said that Apple has mostly stopped advertising on Twitter. There's already rumors that smartphone stores may crack down on Twitter due to Musk's free speech ambition. Twitter's former top censor, Joel Roth, revealed in a New York Times column that the calls for the app review teams at Google and Apple have already begun. It's very interesting that they'll allow Truth Social, Donald Trump's platform, on the App Store and on the Android store. They won't allow Twitter. Got it. Okay. If Twitter were banned from Apple and Google app stores, it would be a major impediment to users installing it on their phones. Theoretically, it would be possible for users to download Twitter onto Android and Apple phones through the use of web apps, but it would create a massive complication process for users. In subsequent tweets, Musk called out Apple for its 30% tax. The battle is here, ladies and gentlemen. Musk said previously that he would build a smartphone if the app stores decided to censor Twitter. Apple is a slave labor company. They are one of the largest plantation owners in the modern world. They utilize China's slave labor. They can't have people like Elon Musk speaking out against the Chinese regime. And they must effectively, Apple, protect the regimes that allow its businesses and its monopolies to continue to flourish. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, this flourishing comes from the control of information. What we saw this morning on Twitter is that the COVID-19 misinformation policies now have been dropped. Shocking move. Twitter has quietly dropped the policy preventing the sharing of false or misleading information about COVID-19. Under the policy, tweets containing misleading information about the disease could be given a label or corrective information about the claim. Millions of accounts were affected by this. The social media giant's COVID-19 misinformation policy no longer appears on the company's website. It's possible to view it using a cached version. No action was taken for 1 strike, but users with 3 strikes would be locked out of their accounts. 4 strikes would be locked out further, and 5 strikes would be permanently suspended. Platform suspended more than 11,000 accounts and removed nearly 98,000 pieces of content for misinformation, which how much of that misinformation turned out to be true? The event horizon for conspiracy theory to reality is about 6 months right now. It's narrowing. It used to be about 2 years. Now it's down to 6 months. It'll probably be 6 days by the time we're at the precipice of 2024. So this is why we are glad that Republicans are finally getting some balls and dragging Dr. Fauci in for questions about the origins of COVID and this COVID disinformation policy itself. Missouri and Louisiana attorney generals grill Fauci over Fed's collusion with big tech. We are going to actually have Eric Schmidt on the show later this week. We're very excited about that, and we'll be asking him about this. Eric Schmidt is the current attorney general of Missouri and senator-elect. Also, we look forward to him in the Senate. Chief medical advisor to President Joe Biden, Dr. Fauci, testified under oath last week over his alleged role in colluding with big tech companies to quash COVID-related posts the administration labeled as misinformation. Testimony came as part of an investigation into the matter that was launched by Louisiana and Missouri attorney generals. The transcript of the November 23rd deposition has yet to be released to the public, but Schmidt and Landry have since hinted at some of the big takeaways. What were the big takeaways? Fauci knew that the COVID lab leak theory had merit, but he sought to immediately discredit it. Fauci also defended lockdowns and expressed his sentiment that the rest of us don't have the ability to determine what's best for ourselves. Does this sound like communist China? In their arguments, Schmidt and Landry claimed that Fauci had been directly involved with multiple social media censorship campaigns against COVID-19. Misinformation, which again, the event horizon there could be as little as 6 months. This included the suspension of independent journalist Alex Berenson. Alex Berenson, who tweeted truth about COVID-19, was kicked offline and has since won a case against Twitter and I think a massive settlement. And in his settlement, he revealed that the White House themselves were asking Twitter to kick him offline. The White House is going after individual Americans, including but not limited to journalists, for misinformation. Ladies and gentlemen, the story is nuclear. What we are going to find out about the government censoring, the government that was under Donald Trump's control, censoring the Hunter Biden laptop, the lack of will to power, the rot inside of our systems will be exposed. These people, they're dangerous. It's not enough to say that they're anti-American. They're pro-communism. These people are hardened Marxists, ladies and gentlemen. And they are, unfortunately, dumb enough to actually try and pull hoaxes and stunts like this. We hope that you are smart enough to recognize it. Of course, if you're watching this show, you are. And to act accordingly. We must change course as a nation. We must not put these truly broke-brain people in positions of power. Please, God, let's not appoint more of them, because what will happen is, well, our next story. Biden's nuclear waste advisor, a transgender named Sam Brinton, 34, admits to stealing a bag at the Minneapolis airport. Has now been arrested and charged over this. Totally weird. This story is bizarre and insane. Sam Brinton, who is the non-binary drag queen, who's working a nuclear waste job at the Department of Energy, charged with a felony theft after allegedly stole a bag from Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport. The story is so weird. This person didn't get on the plane with a checked bag. They literally just straight up stole a bag. This wasn't mistaken identity. Oh, I had the same bag. They didn't check a bag. They just stole a woman's bag in order to wear her clothes. Sam Brinton, whose full title as DOE's Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Office of Spent Fuel and Waste Disposition, is accused of taking the bag in September, currently on leave of absence. Found guilty, could face 5 years in jail. massive fine, both. Brinton made headlines earlier this year by proudly announcing on LinkedIn he became deputy assistant of spent fuel. 34-year-old scientist is the first non-binary person to accept the position, federal government. Please, ladies and gentlemen, let's continue. This person is a lecturer on kink, doggy kink. Great. Very good. Scroll through the article. Let's go, Royce. Scroll. Let's have a see. Let's look at Sam Brinton. Okay, so there's Sam Brinton. Is that the stolen bag? Maybe. Okay. There you go. Good. It's inside that's an office inside the Department of Energy. Have a dear friend who used to work at the Department of Energy. That might be actually his office. Yikes. After reviewing the several surveillance videos, the woman identified that the bag was hers and had roughly $2,500 worth of clothing in it. Brinton was at the airport, arriving from a flight from Washington, D.C., but had not checked a bag for their journey. So this was just straight up theft. This is theft. This is stealing a woman's clothes in order to wear them? Who knows? Let's definitely make sure that we put more mentally ill people in positions of power in Washington, D.C. This is going to work out great for all of us. What's happening here? Well, what's happening here is a high-ranking Biden official, actually the highest, one of the highest-ranking Biden officials in nuclear waste, and it's a pretty big-time job, probably going to go to prison for stealing women's clothing. Here's the news clip about it.
Sam Brinton is now on leave from the Department of Energy. Unknown if the leave is connected to Brinton being accused of stealing a woman's clothing and luggage from Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport. Anthony Gakowski of Alpha News reports that Brinton initially lied to police about the luggage, then agreed to return it, but apparently has not yet done so. Brinton is the first openly gender-fluid person to hold a leadership post at the DOE, which the official title is Deputy Assistant Secretary of Spent Waste Disposition. That means disposing of spent nuclear fuel. Interesting that Brinton's his drag queen alter ego is Sister Ray D.O. Active. Brinton is also controversial for lecturing at colleges about Kink 101, talking about things like a pup play fetish, dressing up young men in dog collars and muzzles. Brinton is also a member of a drag queen society that uses graphic sexual names to mock Catholic nuns. Brinton, by the way, is seen here with Rachel Levine, the first transgender Associate Secretary of Health and Human Services. Brinton is also proud of once visiting the White House in high heels.
So maybe don't take degenerates, brain damaged, and put them in positions of power over you. Maybe that. Just a thought. Again, criminals as well. Just a thought. Hopefully, prison. We'll see. For Sam Brinton. On a leave of absence. Well, we'll see. Has the White House released a statement on this? You hired a criminal, right? So you've hired a criminal. This person is being criminally prosecuted now for stealing a woman's luggage along with her identity. So where's the White House statement on that? Well, there's none. Just like with China, there was no White House statement. Millions of people being abused by the Chinese authorities, and Biden says nothing. White House ignores China's violent crackdowns, delays statement supporting the right to protests. John Kirby, the Pentagon spokesperson, talking about the protesters yesterday at the White House, said, "We support protest." It doesn't say anything about American rights, human rights, civil rights, the rights of human beings to not be put into concentration camps or burned alive inside of their homes. No, we just generally support protests. The protesters speak for themselves. Listen to disgraced hack John Kirby.
I'm wondering, what is the president's reaction when he hears protesters in China chant freedom or Xi Jinping step down?
The president's not going to speak for protesters around the world. They're speaking for themselves.
And so there's no reaction?
These protesters are speaking for themselves. What we are doing is making it clear that we support the right of peaceful protest.
John Kirby continued to get a truth enema from our favorite Peter Doocy on Fox. Check it out.
So just to follow up, John, on the China issue, why is the White House's line that everybody has the right to peacefully protest and not the U.S. thinks it's bad to lock people up in their houses to stop COVID?
We've made it clear, Peter, that a lockdown is not a policy that we're going to support here. We've come a long way over these last 3 years. Hard to believe, 3 years in terms of treating COVID and preventing COVID. So we've said, a lockdown is not a policy that we support here. But obviously, there are people in China that have concerns about that, and they're protesting that, and we believe they should be able to do that peacefully.
Have concerns. They're being locked in their houses, jackass, and burned alive. These are not concerns. These people live inside of a slave state, a concentration camp, in order to make our iPhones. Then, when the government finds it necessary, they burn them alive, beat them in the streets, deperson and dehuman them. They violate every tenet of civil rights. And isn't that the point of this country, to stand up for things like that? Isn't that the reason we're in effing Ukraine right now? $100 billion in to support, to moralize about Ukraine. How many lectures about Ukraine have we gotten? Oh, we're doing this because of democracy, because of human rights. Russia doesn't stand up for human rights. How much money have we spent? How many leaders have gone out? Mitch McConnell in the middle of the 2022 cycle, not going to Arizona, not going to Nevada. No, he goes to Ukraine. Kyiv. That's where Mitch McConnell drags his old ass to. Tell you exactly where the priorities of the Republican Party are. And I am sick to my stomach at these people, these frauds. We don't have any moral authority to talk to the brutal, murderous dictators of the Communist Party of China. These flaccid, weak bastards. I am so sick of it. I have had it up to here. I cannot. And in the turn of a dime, they will sit there and lecture you about how we must spend every last American dollar, bomb, bullet, and life, if need be, to protect Ukraine and their borders. Yet the cartel, the murderous mafia cartel that runs China as a slave state, we must allow them to put a ball gag in our mouth, open our borders so they can pour fentanyl into the bloodstreams of our children. And when their people are being slaughtered in the streets and in their homes, we can't even denounce it. Because we know what's coming next. What's coming next is China. For you and for me. They're the model. If we were to denounce them, we'd be denouncing our own plans. So no, actually. We'll sit there and we'll lecture you about a guy in a tracksuit in Ukraine and how he needs another $1 billion. And then we'll let the people of China, the true brave people of China, doing things that bravery I've never committed in my life. I've never done anything as brave as the people standing up holding a white piece of paper in China right now. Because they stand to actually lose something, truly. Ladies and gentlemen. No. America can't stand up for them, just like in Tiananmen Square. America could have toppled the CCP with the brush of a butterfly wing. They were so fragile in Tiananmen Square. It would have collapsed. Everything would have fallen with the word of the U.S. president, with a single motion. But no. Instead, let's use the CCP as plantation owners, and let's use the Chinese people as modern-day slaves to make our gadgets, to rob our heartland of manufacturing, because it'll make sure that our profit margins grow and our market caps grow. That's the way. That's the globalist way. These people are disgusting. And the Biden regime is on the take. They are fully in support of the Chinese dictatorship. And they want you to know it. They want you to know it. The American people don't want it. New polling finds out that 62% of the American people want Hunter Biden investigated. 61% say that Joe Biden was likely compromised by China's business deal. This polling, according to the Daily Mail, telephone and online survey from Rasmussen for Miranda Devine, a columnist from Laptop from Hell, proves that the GOP has overwhelming support for their investigations into the Biden family. Reps Jim Jordan and James Comer said that the Oversight Committee will be leading criminal probes into the Biden family and their foreign business dealings. A survey of 1,000 likely U.S. voters said that such claims did not go far enough. 61% said the voters believe it was likely. 44% said very likely that Joe Biden at least consulted in his son's business. Of course, we have the voicemails proving that he did this. Joe Biden talking about his business dealings on voicemail with Hunter Biden. This is the bloody laptop. This is the bloody glove of our political era. Of course, Hunter Biden's moral failings, you could say selling out America, treason is the highest crime. If you wouldn't be blamed for saying that, we think that it is arguable that that is his highest crime. What about his failings on a spiritual sense, however? Like, are any of you parents in the audience? Do you have children? Are you married? Do you want children? Do you hope to have children someday, even if you're not married? You probably have some type of drive as a man or a woman to protect then those said children, born or unborn. This show, of course, is staunchly pro-life. And that means that we're pro-supporting life after it has been born, and that's why we do this show, actually. We say God, family, country every single show. I think about my daughters every single time I say that. It is a particularly blackened, demonic moral refuse that you must sink to, a special circle of hell, to have children that you don't acknowledge, to have children that you refuse to give the decency of acknowledgement to their lives. Black lives matter. All lives matter. Yeah, they do. What about your children? You know, acknowledging that their lives matter is important. The Biden family refuses to do this to a legitimate grandchild of Joe Biden. It's a sickening story here. For the second Christmas in a row, Joe Biden's forgotten one of his grandkids there on the Christmas display. The only thing worse than getting coal in your stocking is not having one hung for you at all, reads the New York Post. For the second straight year, the Biden White House Christmas display does not include stockings for Hunter Biden's out-of-wedlock daughter. First Lady Jill Biden unveiled the Christmas photos, the Christmas decorations, complete with 77 Christmas trees bearing more than 83,000 lights. Lots of Christmas decorations in the White House. The state dining room has socks for every Biden grandchild, with one notable exception. Hunter Biden's ex-wife, Kathleen Blue's 3 daughters, Naomi, Finnegan, and Maisie, were there represented, along with Naomi's new husband, Peter Neal, blah, blah, blah. The Biden family tree is stringy like a plate of spaghetti, man. It's really gross. You know, Biden dated his dead brother's widow for a while. Super healthy family there. Why don't you go take another shower with Ashley? Still among the stockings bore the name Baby, apparent reference to Hunter Biden's 2-year-old son, Beau. But Hunter's 4-year-old daughter with Navy Jones Robert, who was born out of wedlock for the former stripper, was not included in the festive display, sadly. Hunter Biden denied that he was Navy's dad. He had no recollection of meeting his mother. Interesting. That she danced at a D.C. strip club that he frequented. This was while Joe Biden was vice president, just in case you wonder how much the press protects the Bidens. I wonder if Don Jr. was banging strippers while his daddy was serving in the executive office. Would you get a story on that? Anyway, a DNA test. A DNA test shows that Hunter Biden is indeed the father, and that he is paying an undisclosed sum to the mother of his child. Roberts is on the payroll of Hunter's consulting firm during her pregnancy, and she was kicked off the company's insurance plan after giving birth. Real great. Restoring the soul of America, the Bidens, really. Restoring the soul of America. So, let me get this straight. The stripper who was not remembered in probably a fit of drug-induced pique by Hunter, who was impregnated by Hunter in that blind fit of drug-induced delirium, has a child, brings that child to term. Good, rightfully. We support that on this show. I mean, honestly, like, it's not the child's fault. Wait a second, it's not the child's fault. My children didn't ask to be born. I had them. I owe them everything. They owe me nothing. So now the Bidens, restoring the soul of America, remember, restoring the soul of America. The Bidens refuse to acknowledge for the second year in a row that that child exists, even though a DNA test proves that it's Joe Biden's grandchild. Be nice for an endeavoring reporter to actually ask about this. We think this would be important to ask about. Wouldn't you like to hear the answer? Hey, Joe, do you have any Christmas message for your grandchild that you refuse to put a stocking up for? Hey, Joe, what's your Christmas message to your granddaughter? No, the one, last name Roberts. London Roberts. Navy Jones Roberts. There it is. What's your, hey, Joe, I'd love to see this clip. Hey, Joe, what's your Christmas message to Navy Jones Roberts? Who? Your granddaughter. That's how it would go. That's exactly how it would go. Ladies and gentlemen. The man who showers with his daughter Ashley, whose son dates his brother's widow, the man who married his own mistress, babysitter, the man who's in open collusion and business with America's greatest enemies while serving in executive office, the man who refuses to acknowledge his own genetic grandchild. That man is restoring the soul of America. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why we need free speech in this country. Because people don't actually know that. That's why this show exists. Because we need to tell these stories. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what we do here every single day. We have our priorities straight. God, family, country. Those priorities are pretty cut and dry. And the family component of those priorities, very important, especially here around the holidays. So a shame and a pox upon Jill Biden and the entire White House for this, again, disgraceful act. Hunter Biden needs to be investigated. And Republicans, get about the business of doing that. It'll be the greatest Christmas gift we could ever be given under our Christmas trees, which are free because we are free. Men and women. We're born that way. That's the state of nature. That's the way that God made us. And it's the way that we're going to stay as long as we fight. And that's what we do on this show. No apologies. Offense at all times. No concessions. Offense. That's what we do here on this show. My name is Benny Johnson, and this is The Benny Show.